An ancient human fleet hung lifeless in space. It shocked the Barzan High Council to their core. The Barzan leader Zephyr stared at the grainy hologram in disbelief. 50 massive human warships, each over 10 kilometers long, floated silently in a remote part of the Sombrero galaxy. The ancient vessels dwarfed anything in the Barzan armada. They were of a strange angular design never recorded by any of the 100 races in the Barzan Empire. Zephyr's advisor Xandar tapped furiously at the control panel. "We've checked the archives, sir. This fleet doesn't match anything from any species, going back over 10,000 years. "Then it must predate the Empire itself," Zephyr murmured. "And if it's human, they've been around far longer than anyone realized." He felt a deep unease, like the ships would burst to life and vaporize homeworld at any moment. "A force like that could pose a grave threat to everything we've built." Another advisor, Yaris, snapped mandibles in objection. "Even if those hulks are ancient, they can't possibly still function. Besides, humans are newcomers. Their homeworld only reached us a century ago. They're primitives, remember? I'm not taking any chances with a species we still know too little about. Get eyes on that fleet at once. I want to know what we're dealing with." Zephyr's heart raced as he watched the hologram flicker out. "And send for a human expert, whatever the cost. Their insight will be crucial." The BS Invictus dropped out of hyperspace, gliding towards the lifeless human fleet. Captain Zoltar felt his gills flare in shock as he took in the sight of the massive ships on the viewscreen. Each one stretched for kilometers, utterly dwarfing the Barzan vessel. "By the ancestors, look at the size of those things," Xandar exclaimed, his eyes bulging. Tim, the human expert, leaned forward, scrutinizing the ships. "I recognize the design. These belong to the United Earth Federation, a powerful human faction from over 500 years ago, during our Great Expansion era, but they vanished without a trace. Most considered it a myth." "Impossible," Yaris scoffed, snapping his mandibles. "We have no records of any such faction in the Barzan archives." "With all due respect, there's a lot about human history your archives don't cover," Tim replied calmly. "I'm telling you, this is the UEF fleet. We need to get a closer look." Zoltar hesitated, then nodded. "Very well, we'll board the largest ship and investigate, but be on your guard." The Invictus docked with the massive vessel, designated UEF Titan according to Tim. To their surprise, the airlock cycled open smoothly, revealing a pristine interior that looked untouched by time. Tim took point, his old Navy SEAL instincts kicking in as he moved through the dark corridors, weapon at the ready. The Barzan delegation followed close behind, their nervousness palpable. As they entered a cavernous central chamber, Tim froze. Row after row of stasis pods stretched out before them, each one containing a motionless human form. "Suspended animation," Tim whispered, approaching the nearest pod. He wiped away the condensation obscuring the glass, revealing the face of a man in his late 30s, clad in a crisp UEF military uniform. Tim turned back to the Barzan's, eyes wide. "This is Admir." The words died in his throat as the man's eyes snapped open. In one fluid motion he sat up, shattering the pod door. Zoltar and his advisors recoiled, shock and fear rippling through them as the ancient human rose, his piercing gaze fixed on the boarding party. The ancient human's piercing eyes locked on Tim and the Barzans. He swung his legs over the side of the pod, standing to his full height. The man cut an imposing figure, his uniform crisp and immaculate despite centuries of stasis. "I'm Admiral Marcus Steele, commander of the UEF Titan and this fleet. You've found us at a critical juncture." Tim stepped forward, shaking off his shock. "Admiral Steele, I'm Tim, a human serving with the Barzan Empire. This is Captain Zoltar and his crew. We thought the UEF was a myth." Steele's gaze hardened. "No myth, son. We were tasked with a classified mission half a millennia ago to defend humanity from an alien threat we barely understood ourselves." Zoltar and his advisors exchanged uneasy glances as Steele continued. "Our deep space probes discovered an artifact on a remote planet, covered in markings we couldn't decipher, but it contained a warning of a coming invasion that would threaten our very existence." Tim listened intently, his mind racing. The UEF had known about an alien threat centuries before the Barzan Empire even existed. "We couldn't risk causing a panic," Steele said, "so we began preparing in secret, constructing a fleet of advanced warships that could meet this threat head-on. Technology that would seem like magic even now." Yaris snapped his mandibles. "Impossible. We would have records of such advancements." Steele fixed him with a cold stare. "You think you know everything about human history? We kept this hidden for a damn good reason." Suddenly, an alarm blared through the Titan, red lights flashing. Steele sprang into action, rushing to a control panel. "They're here. All hands, battle stations." The Admiral's voice boomed through the ship's intercom, and the other Stasis pods began to open. Dozens of UEF soldiers emerged, hurrying to their posts with practiced efficiency. Tim and the Barzans watched in awe as the fleet came to life around them. Ship after ship lit up, their engines thrumming with power. Weapon systems hummed as they charged, and shimmering energy shields enveloped each vessel. A hologram flickered to life, showing Steele's face. "Captain Zoltar, we need your help. This is the threat we've been preparing for, and we can't face it alone." Zoltar hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "The Barzan Empire stands with you, Admiral. The Invictus will join your formation." As the Barzan ship took its place among the UEF fleet, Tim stared out at the approaching enemy armada. Each ship bore the same alien markings as the artifact Steele had described, their hulls pulsing with an eerie energy. The fate of humanity, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance as the two fleets converged, ready for a battle that had been centuries in the making. The combined UEF and Barzan fleet fought valiantly against the swarming alien ships. UF vessels unleashed devastating volleys of plasma fire, each shot vaporizing an enemy craft. Barzan ships darted nimbly between the larger human warships, picking off stragglers with precision. Yet for every alien ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. The enemy's numbers seemed endless. On the Titan's bridge, warning klaxons blared. Damage reports flooded in as the hull shuddered under the alien onslaught. Admiral Steele gripped the command console, his face grim. They were losing ground fast. "Sir, we can't hold them off much longer," a tactical officer shouted over the din of battle. "Our shields are failing." Steele's eyes narrowed. He had one last card to play. Prepare the Sun Hammer. Tim and the Barzans exchanged confused looks. "Sun Hammer? What's that?" Zoltar asked. Steele didn't answer. He punched in a series of commands, and a low hum filled the bridge. On the view screen, a massive cannon emerged from the Titan's hull, swiveling to face the enemy fleet. "Energy levels rising," an engineer reported. 80%, 90, critical mass reached." The Sunhammer glowed with blinding light, raw power crackling along its length. Tim shielded his eyes, barely able to look at the screen. The alien ship surged forward in a final, desperate assault. Plasma blasts hammered the Titan's weakening shields. "Fire!" Steele roared. A searing beam of pure energy erupted from the Sunhammer, cleaving through the enemy fleet. Alien ships vanished instantly, reduced to clouds of molten debris. Hundreds more shattered like glass, torn apart by the cannon's devastating shockwave. In moments, the once mighty alien armada lay in ruins. The few remaining ships turned tail, fleeing into hyperspace. Cheers erupted on the Titan's bridge. UEF and Barzan crews alike clapped each other on the back, celebrating their hard-won victory. Admiral Steele sagged in his chair, exhaustion etched on his face. He turned to Tim and the Barzans, a weary smile playing across his lips. "We couldn't have done this without you," he said. "Your aid was invaluable. I propose an alliance between our peoples to stand together against this threat." Zoltar stepped forward, extending a clawed hand. "The Barzan Empire would be honored to join forces with the UEF. I will bring your proposal to the High Council immediately." As the two leaders shook hands, Tim cleared his throat. "Admiral, I have a request. I'd like to stay aboard the Titan as a liaison between our civilizations, to learn more about the UEF and your remarkable technology." Steele appraised him for a long moment. Then he nodded, respect glinting in his eyes. We'd be glad to have you, Tim. Your courage and quick thinking saved a lot of lives today. He gestured to the tactical display, where new alien ship signatures blinked at the edge of sensor range. But this fight is far from over. We need to plan our next move, and fast. The Sunhammer bought us time, but something tells me we'll need a lot more than that to win this war. In the aftermath of the battle, Tim and the UEF Barzan Alliance regrouped on the Titan. They pored over the data from the engagement, searching for any clues about their enemy. Suddenly, Admiral Steele burst into the room, his face ashen. "I've made a disturbing discovery," he said, his voice shaking. "The aliens we've been fighting, they're not aliens at all, they're human." Shocked silence filled the room. Tim stared at Steele, his mind reeling. "What do you mean they're human?" Steele tapped a few commands on the console, bringing up a holographic display. Images of the alien ships and soldiers flickered into view, but now certain features stood out: the vaguely humanoid shapes, the tattered remnants of old Earth uniforms. "These are the descendants of the Varians, a human civilization exiled from Earth during the Great Expansion," Steele explained. "They were genetically modified to survive on their new homeworld, which is why they look so different." Tim studied the images, a growing sense of unease in his gut. The pieces started to fall into place: the Varians' advanced technology, their unrelenting hatred for the UEF. "They want revenge," he whispered, "for being cast out all those centuries ago." Steele nodded grimly. "And they've been planning this for a long, long time." As the revelation sank in, alarms blared throughout the ship. The Varian fleet had returned, larger and more powerful than ever. Tim and the others rushed to their stations, preparing for the fight of their lives. But as the battle raged around him, Tim couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. He watched Steele out of the corner of his eye, noting the Admiral's calm demeanor, the calculated way he directed the UEF forces. It was almost as if... Tim's blood ran cold. Steele had known. He had known all along who the Varians really were, and he had played them all, manipulating both sides to his own ends. Anger surged through Tim's veins. He confronted Steele on the bridge, demanding answers. The Admiral just smiled, a cold, cruel thing. "Of course I knew," he said. "The Varians were the perfect enemy, a threat to unite humanity under the UEF banner, and now, thanks to you and the Barzans, we have the power to wipe them out and establish our dominance once and for all." Tim recoiled in horror. He looked to Zoltar and the other Barzans, saw the same revulsion in their eyes. They had been used, all of them, pawns in Steele's twisted game. In that moment, Tim made his choice. He turned his back on Steele and the UEF, siding with the Varians and the Barzans. Together they exposed the truth of Steele's betrayal, turning the tide of the battle. The UEF fleet, once so mighty, crumbled under the onslaught. Steele was dragged from the Titan's bridge in chains to face justice for his crimes. And as the dust settled, the Varians, the Barzans, and what remained of the UEF agreed to a fragile peace. But for Tim, the fight was far from over. He had seen the worst of what humanity was capable of, the depths they could sink to in the name of power and control. And he had seen the best, too, in the bravery and sacrifice of those who stood against tyranny. He knew deep in his bones that this was only the beginning, that there was still so much work to be done to heal the wounds of the past and build a better future for all. Tim set his jaw and looked out at the stars, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.